This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
we got to give people a chance to succeed, and sometimes we're not doing that.
the Speaker of the Tennessee House, Cameron Sexton, lays out his agenda for the upcoming legislative session.
What we're trying to do is not retain students, we are trying to propel students forward.
A new third grade retention law has already proven to be polarizing.
It is no secret that DCS has failed to hire and retain staff.
It's been a month and a half since Governor Lee learned of kids in DCS custody sleeping on floors in offices, and the DCS commissioner requesting more funds. More in our This Week cover story.
The explosion happened right in front of our house, right across the street.
An update from Ukraine as the Russians target residential neighborhoods, from Nashville photojournalist David Van Hooser and UN aid worker Christina Katrakis. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. A crisis in the Department of Children's Services with children sleeping on office floors and the commissioner seeking additional funds. More in our This Week cover story. But first, a controversial third grade retention law approved last year could have kept 68% of third graders from moving to fourth grade. Now there is a demand for change. Here's State Capitol Newsroom reporter Chris O'Brien.
Depending on who you ask.
What we're trying to do is not retain students, we are trying to propel students forward.
The third grade retention law has already proven to be polarizing.
I probably have gotten more letters, emails, and calls on third grade retention this summer and fall than anything else.
Really, once it was all said and done in the legislature, it actually was a very bipartisan bill passing with little opposition. One of just 3 lawmakers to vote against the final version, Nashville Democrat Representative John Ray Clements.
This is no surprise to us. Unfortunately, it's a surprise to a lot of parents across the state of Tennessee because they didn't realize what harm Governor Bill Lee and the Republican Party intended to do to their child.
The law says, quote, beginning with the 2022-2023 school year, a student in the third grade shall not be promoted to the next grade level unless the student is determined to be proficient in English language arts. If the law were in effect last year, it would have held back roughly 68% of third graders. But Lundberg says there are mechanisms in place to prevent that.
There is misinformation on this because a lot of teachers, a lot of educators, and a lot of parents thought, oh my gosh, all these kids are suddenly going to be prevented from going into fourth grade instantly. Absolutely not.
If a child is below the benchmark, the law requires them to take tutoring, a summer session, or both, something Democrats disagree with.
It places all, importance on one standardized test. A child can have a bad day.
Changes could be on the way.
There's already some legislation being proposed. We'll go back in. So what I want to do is have a third grade literacy committee dedicated to all those bills that are being filed.
White and Lundberg chair up 2 education committees in the Capitol. This issue could somewhat pit them against each other.
I'm comfortable with the law right now and how it is.
In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
Now to our This Week cover story. Tennessee's governor heard about kids in state custody sleeping on office floors and a plea for more money from the DCS commissioner more than a month ago. Here's News 2's Adam Mincer with an update.
Today is a very sad day.
Teacher and mom of 2, Eliza Fletcher, was killed while out jogging last September. Her death not only highlighted the rape kit backlog in Tennessee, but sparked change.
We heard from the TBI on what their requests were, and we moved the red tape out of the way.
After Fletcher's death, Governor Bill Lee announced a plan to speed up the hiring of new forensic positions at the TBI.
And hopefully that will get those wait times reduced.
And it's that urgency Democrats want to see from Lee regarding DCS.
The commissioner herself characterized it as horrific.
Last month, the comptroller's office released an audit of DCS. In part, it found the department at times had children in state care sleeping on office floors, and also first-year caseworker turnover is at 97%.
It is no secret that DCS has failed to hire and retain staff.
The average annual salary for a new case manager at DCS is $35,000. The audit recommends increasing that to retain more staff. And that is one of Commissioner Quinn's plans if she gets the $156 million budget increase she asked for. But if approved, no money from the state budget will come down until this summer.
We have the money to do this.
By the most recent count of 2022 data, the state brought in $743 million more than expected in tax revenue. But not everyone thinks more money right now is is the best solution.
My larger concern is that the budget that we see here in a few weeks has the funding that we need, and that we don't just also just say, hey, you know what? If we just throw money at it, we'll solve the problem.
Even though from the governor down, lawmakers say this should be a priority.
We have a problem, we're going to fix it.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. I'm pleased to be joined by the Speaker of the Tennessee House of Representatives, Republican from Crossville, the Honorable Cameron Sexton. Nice to see you, sir.
It's good to be
Hope
here.
you had good holidays.
It was fun. It was good. Santa Claus visited, so we're good.
Santa Claus is great. Now, before you brag on all the industry that's come to Tennessee, which has been great, very good, you have to give a shout out to the Buc-ee's in Crossville. That place is impressive.
It's good. It's been a great destination stop and
friendly people.
Friendly people. There's a lot of people in Tennessee who've stopped. The only thing I wish I had a billboard right beside it.
Maybe that's the next thing. That's the next step. Let's talk a little bit about the governor making some news yesterday. New infrastructure plan. He's facing about a $60 to $70 million backlog of construction projects. He's combining some programs, trying to move some financing around. He's also, the headline really coming out of this, though, is the choice lanes, toll lanes, as you were. It wouldn't be a toll road, but you would choose to pay. The idea being people who paid to go in these lanes would get there quicker. We talked about this last year with gas tax revenues coming down. The state's going to need an alternative or an additional source of funding. Could this be part of that for roads?
I mean, it could. I mean, we have an issue in the state with congestion in 5 or 6 places all across the state. That's like $26 billion. If we focus all of our attention on that, that means rural areas of our state aren't going to get any road money and expansions or new bridges. And so we can't do it all. And so looking at an alternative that Florida and Texas and Georgia has done, choice lanes, express lanes where there's not 18-wheelers, what I will say is those roads right now in Tennessee are not part of this discussion. Those will never be an express lane, a lane that you pay in. These would all be in addition to.
This is a little different, too, than like the HOV lanes because it wouldn't require 2 people, and it would be your choice. There would be no need for enforcement. I would assume like LPR cameras, take your license plate and send you a bill.
That's right. In Texas, you go at rush hour. These are guaranteed to be 55 miles an hour. There's not 18-wheelers on these things, and it's your choice if you want to pay or not. The state would still lease the property. We would own the property. The company that would collect the fee would be the ones who build it and maintain it, and then the state would just be there with them if there's an issue.
With this bill, with the governor's infrastructure bill on top of the $1.2 billion coming from the federal infrastructure bill, do you foresee a lot of infrastructure work, a lot of repair work happening in Tennessee next year?
It does. One thing that Commissioner Ely and the governor and I have talked about with Lieutenant Governor is the timeline to build roads in the state of Tennessee. It takes 15 years, start to finish on average, to build a road. We can't wait 15 years. So I think the commissioner and the governor are looking at trying to figure out how to get that down to 5 or 6 years.
In that same vein,
yes.
any discussion, any input, any kind of movement towards mass transit, whether it be regional, whether it be statewide, whether it be rail for the state, and any discussion this year on that?
I think there is discussion. There's a need for rail. You know, right now Amtrak is wanting to go from Atlanta to Nashville, which would be huge, through Chattanooga, which would make Chattanooga a hub. And so I think we need to explore all things: express lanes, choice lanes, whatever you want to call them, rail coming up from Atlanta to Nashville, which would open us up to a lot, as well as looking at mass transit as well. Because the other thing is a lot of the jobs are away from the downtowns now. Memphis is that way. So we got to figure out how to help people get to the job until they can afford to buy a car.
DCS is having some issues. The commissioner calls it a crisis. She says it doesn't have enough people, doesn't have enough money. Kids are sleeping in office floors. The governor has talked about this. There was a push to have a special session. He chose not to do that. So the ball goes to the legislature, which goes in session in another week or so. DCS has some issues. Are they going to get additional money, additional funding? Going to be some changes to help that out so that some of these kids have a proper place to be sleeping?
The governor says he's going to increase funding. He's going to increase pay. One of the problems we have in state government is we pay less than the private market. And so we lose our best employees to go to other places because they make more money. So we have to increase our pay to match what private is. But the other thing, there was a decision made a few years ago with another commissioner at DCS that centralized placement services. It moved it from the local offices and moved it to Nashville. And ever since that point, we have had placement issues. And so we need to let the locals back to doing more placement. Won't solve the problem, but will help ease the
It might have a bigger, broader area for foster families and the like.
They know the region, they know the people, they know the associations, they have their connections. Let's let the locals make that decision, those local offices, and then I think we can, with more money and some other stuff, we can get there.
Last year, Tennessee approved the abortion ban. The law here in Tennessee. It's nearly a total abortion ban. There's been calls from doctors and women's rights groups and others to think about or consider amending this law to put exemptions in for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Yesterday, you said you were at least open to the possibility. Tell me your stand on this. Do you think there's a need for some kind of exceptions here in Tennessee for women and doctors who are afraid of being criminalized for doing their job?
Yeah, I think there's a couple parts here. What we currently have needs to be clarified. There's a lot of confusion about it. You don't want to have confusion, especially in this area. And so you have an affirmative defense that physicians, which means they're guilty and they have to prove their innocence. You should have to prove their guilt on them, right? It shouldn't be reversed. So we need to change that. The other thing I think that you'll have to take a look at is life of the mother. Some people say life of the mother is in there. That's the intent. Others look at it and say, I don't see it. If that was the intent, we got to put life of the mother in and re-clarify what that means. And then when you look at rape and incest, if the right language comes to the bill, there's a bill right now that's been filed by the other side, which would take you up to birth for rape and incest, life of the mother. That's way too far. So the language would have to be right, but I would support the 3 exceptions, just like Ronald Reagan and Mike Pence would.
So in worst case scenario, you think there needs to be some consideration to putting some exceptions in there, not necessarily all exceptions, but for the life of the mother, incest, rape, are up for discussion.
Right. In this discussion, that should be with the Republican women and the Democrat women and women in large about how they feel about this. For a long time, this has been dominated by men. We need to start listening to the women and listen to say, what do you feel? What do you think? How do you think we should proceed, right? I think Republican women in my caucus, I'm not going to say they all feel the same way, but there's a lot of passion on this. And so I think we need to do a better job.
I think you talk to women, you're exactly right. They want to be a part of this discussion. Violent crime, sadly, is up across Tennessee. It's up here in Nashville. Robberies, armed robberies, murders, homicides. TBI has us at number 3 in the nation for an increase in those crimes. Number 10 in the nation. We were number 4 for men killing women. What's the reason for the increase in violent crime? Is it a lack of police force? I know that the Tennessee legislature has funded police and tried to add more officers. How do we get a handle on this issue?
Well, I mean, it's good. Homicides are down, right? For guns,
yes.
gun homicides are down. And so what I will say is that's why we pass truth in sentencing. You have to let criminals know that they're going to have a hard sentence. The guy who got out in Memphis and raped and kidnapped, he got out. And so you have people in prison who are serving time, but they're not held accountable. They're just as violent in the prison, and they still get good credit to get out. So it's a systematic problem. But also, I agree with the governor. We got to put programs in place. Supportive housing is one. We're going to work with the governor and commissioners and some people here in Davidson County on supportive housing. When someone comes out, we need to give them the services they need and a place to live so that they don't go back to where the people are going to pull them back in. We got to give people a chance to succeed, and sometimes we're not doing that.
Juvenile crime is up here in Nashville. It's up across the state. How do we address that issue? It seems like we had a handle on it for a little while, and then it got out of control again.
Well, what we have is you have juveniles who are committing 8 or 9 crimes before they ever see a judge. You now have the adult hardened criminals who are using juveniles because they know they can commit 8 or 9 crimes. The carjackings are up. I think juveniles are doing carjacking. Ag assaults are up. I think juveniles are doing ag assaults. We're going to propose this year a couple bills. One bill we're going to look at is a 3-strike on violent crime. If you commit 3 violent crimes, you go to jail without parole for life. If you're a juvenile and you commit these violent crimes, you're automatically going to be tried as an adult. There's no option to be tried as a juvenile.
There was a 3 strikes law in the 80s. It was in effect for a while. It didn't work. Why do you think it would work better now?
Well, because what you're saying is if you're a violent criminal and you do especially aggravated kidnapping, then you get charged for 2nd-degree murder. Those are not life sentences. You are going to get back out. We're giving you 2 chances on violent crime, things that are deemed the most violent, that you probably served 8 to 10 years for. You get back out and you do it again, okay, second chance. The 3rd time, come on. You got to go to jail.
Speaker Cameron Sexton, appreciate your time and your insight. Good luck with the start of the legislature.
Well, thank you.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. Twice last year, we spoke with Nashville photojournalist David Van Hooser, who traveled to Ukraine to document the work of his friend and aid worker, Memphis resident Christina Kotrakis. Tonight, as the Russia bombing targets residential areas, words of concern from David and Christina.
I woke up this morning to a lot of notifications on my phone and computer, a lot of pings coming through. And what it was these images, video and still shots from Ukraine sent by my friend over there, Christina, who lives there with her family, her husband and son, Mark.
Christina, as much as you're able to, can you describe to me where you were when the latest series of attacks hit Kiev?
Well, actually, we were in the house, and my son went out with his grandpa to the shop to buy bread, and the explosion happened right in front of our house, right across the street. That's Protasi Yar. In fact, that's the visually showing with the big crater and fire coming out. That's right across from us. And so the fear and the moment where you don't know where your child is was overwhelming. I'm an American here with my family and a 7-year-old. Remained to run the mission of humanitarian aid and refused to leave the country since the beginning of the open war conflict. But this is the terrorist tactics that Russians are using. Basically, bombing on celebration days such as New Year or closer to Christmas, bombing in the morning when people go to school, when people go to work, students go to colleges and they get bombed right away. This is, in fact, you're showing right now a bomb shelter of my son's school right next to our house that got hit this morning, and the building across from his school, from Mark's school, got hit as well. That's the building. So this is supposed to be the safe route for kids. And my question is, what is safety and who is safe at this point in Ukraine generally? But this triggers not just the safety of Ukraine, this triggers the safety of the world because it's a terror attack, just as 9/11 was.
This is what was going on for them. Another day, another night of missiles and rockets hitting Ukraine, specifically targeting power plants, water treatment plants, whatever, in a targeted effort to starve these people out, to freeze them out, to commit crimes against the people of Ukraine. And that's what they're having to live through.
Well, we have alarms going on and off. Half of the city is without light and water and heat, as you know, and this is New Year, right? So this is a very hypocritical way Russia greets people with New Year while saying that, we want peace or negotiations. This is the hypocrisy of the highest.
I was over there in April and May of this year and got to renew my friendship with Christina, got to meet some of her friends on her team who do humanitarian work for internally displaced people and for refugees, and they are just so committed to each other. I am in awe of that.
We're staying until the end. This is something that a decision we made from day one, and we do not betray people that rely on us. We have thousands of refugees, IDPs relying on our aid daily. We have 5,000 only at our base and many at the front lines. And we are not, leaving people behind.
I think we need to reflect, though, that I can walk out onto my street here, out my door, onto the street, and there are no bombed out buildings, no bombed out hospitals, houses, whatever. It all looks pretty nice. I can turn on my thermostat and I have heat. I have lights so you can see me, so I can see. And we have that every day. Nobody's threatening that. Nobody's out to kill us and eradicate us. No madman from a neighboring country is attempting to do that. So I just say that not as a point of shame, but as a point of awareness and responsibility that we in America have been given tremendous blessings, amazing blessings. And all I'm pointing out and asking is that we be aware of that.
This is the time to act. So, all the boundaries of good Christina are crossed. And I don't care if I will, preach to the masses and if they will hate me for it. I know I'm already on the blacklist in Russia and that doesn't bother me a bit, but I will do everything so that the world would wake up and finally act instead of watching us die.
So I'm just felt inclined to say this, to leave this message, and to let the people of Ukraine know that they are a shining example as far as caring, showing strength and dignity in the face of horrific things that are going on against their country and against their people.
You can bomb all you want, but you will never destroy the spirit of these people. You will never destroy this nation. No matter how hard you will try. You know, you're just making us stronger.
So anyway, please, let's be good people. We can do that. It's in us to do that. That's how we were created. Okay, thanks.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. And thanks for spending part of your weekend with us, the first weekend of 2023. That will do it for another edition of This Week. We hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week. Between now and then, you have a great week.